Baylor, BYU, Houston, 0 draft picks. What does that say about you? This is Locked On Big 12.
You are Locked On Baylor, your daily podcast on the Baylor Bears. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
It says you're going to be really good at football next season. Happy Tuesday, everybody. Welcome to Locked On Big 12. I'm Drake Toll from America's #1 Big 12 podcast, Locked On Big 12, alongside Cameron Stuart, who is co-hosting today because he's mildly handsome, talks Baylor Bears, and actually doesn't hate BYU, despite what he tweets. We will start Baylor, Houston, BYU, 0 guys drafted to the NFL. Even Arizona had a guy go in the top 10, but these 3 programs did not have anybody. Why is that a good thing? Then we'll hit massive signings. BYU Baylor had guys go off the board post-draft that will be impact players for organizations across the NFL. This conference had a spattering. Kobe Bryant from Kansas, another great example. A spattering of players who were picked up post-draft that will be impact guys. Then ESPN had terrible coverage of Shor Sanders, from Mel Kyper to Reese Davis yelling at Mel Kyper. It was a joke, and it only hurt the whole situation. If you hit subscribe, we get to keep our jobs. Cam, I called you.
Yep, you did.
I said no Baylor Bear was drafted. No BYU Cougar was drafted.
I said again.
And which is kind of a trend. Dave Aranda loves it, really loves it. He liked having Matt Rule's guys get drafted. But
Yeah.
you said this is a good thing. There's a blessing in disguise for these two teams.
Yes, I'm looking at the positive side of life now, Drake. And what it means, I mean, in this world of the transfer portal, especially, because that's kind of the hidden back half of this, is neither of those teams have gotten gutted in the transfer portal. BYU's lost a little bit more plug and play guys than Baylor has, but that means they're both bringing their key guys back, and that's a huge deal. Now, of course, there's a downside in terms of future recruiting, and like Kalani Sitake at least has developed guys that have gotten drafted into the NFL in this current job. Dave Aranda more or less has one, Siaki Ika, because he technically recruited him to LSU as well. And so there's a bit of a downside to that. But when you look at, Baylor and BYU specifically, sorry, Houston, not lumping you into this one, your day will come where you're coming off successful seasons. Obviously, BYU a little bit more so than Baylor, winning 11 games rather than 8. But both with some serious momentum going into the year. If you're going to tell each of these coaches, hey, it might hurt your recruiting in a year or two, that there's a zilch, a goose egg on this NFL draft, but you're not going to get gutted in the transfer portal and you're going to bring your key guys back as a result, I think they would both take that. I think especially Baylor, because they weren't as close to that glory as BYU was last year, where they feel like they're really starting to build something. BYU has been building something. And so I find it as a positive, Drake, because you know what? I mean, to some degree, I don't care as a Baylor fan. I don't really care if my guys get drafted in the NFL. I hope they do. I want them to play in the NFL, but I'm a Baylor fan. Most BYU fans, yes, there's that would be great. But if it means I don't have another Zach Wilson and I have a 12-win football team instead, I'm okay with that.
Yeah. Jaren Hall. Great.
Yeah.
Loved watching the guy play at BYU. Because he didn't have a great NFL career doesn't diminish what he did at BYU. It only elevates it. You look at Patrick Mahomes is the inverse of that.
Yes.
Was a good quarterback at Texas Tech, was a legend there for the numbers he put up, didn't win a ton of games, and now so much of his college career is overshadowed by what he's done in the NFL. Not to say you don't want your guys to succeed, but at BYU, Jaren Hall gets to be the on-campus legend for the rest of his life. Puka Nakua, cool.
Yeah.
Cool that he performed in the NFL, but even if he didn't, he still had an illustrious career at BYU. I don't mind that. I want to liken this RG3. RIP, the injury deal, he could have been really good.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. This is a real quick aside. Do you call that guy a bust? It's tough to call those guys.
No, you can't
Greg
call
Oden.
Yeah, like Brandon Whedon's a bust. RG3
Yes.
is not, because RG3 just they ruined him. I'd be like, hey, no offensive line. Can you take us to the playoffs? He said yes.
Yeah.
And then he ruined his entire lower body.
History will remember him as a bust, but we are here to correct history.
Yeah. I want to liken this to basketball, where you always see the graphic with a Wisconsin or a Purdue. That this team is older than the Detroit Pistons.
Yeah.
And in football, Baylor and BYU are becoming that. BYU especially.
Definitely,
Baylor
yeah.
and BYU are becoming that, and it's a good thing. The older you are, the more experience you have. I say this all the time. I would rather have a third-year guy from Western Kentucky than I would a 4-star wide receiver from Oak Grove High School. Reason being, one of them has Division I prowess. For BYU, you've got guys who are now a lot older in your program. Baylor, a lot older in your program, whereas these one-and-done, 5-star, future transfer portal kids, or like in basketball, you look at a Baylor who loves to recruit the best player in the country, and they're going for a year.
Yeah.
And you go to Florida, who's got a bunch of 26-year-olds who will probably not be drafted into the NBA, and they win the national championship. If you're holding on to your guys, just because they're not being drafted doesn't mean you're a bad college football team. It might actually elevate you as a college football team because you have good college football players.
Yes.
Good pro players, good college football players.
Yes, and there's in the realm of football, there's only a few teams that can truly, reload year after winning big. Your defending national champions right now are amongst them, right? Ohio State can do that. Georgia can do that. It's a small party, and neither BYU nor Baylor is invited. So they need to capitalize on the momentum that they have. Keep guys in-house, not be okay with, we lose our whole team. We're Baylor, we're BYU. We'll get reload and get another team in next year. No, that doesn't work for us. That's 2 years away. Maybe if you're doing it right. So this is a positive, man. This is good.
I think you're also seeing this, though, from Iowa State, who had a couple of guys drafted in the first few rounds, even wide receivers, skill position guys. You're seeing this from Kansas State. You're going to see it from Oklahoma State, who, despite being bad, they want to keep guys in-house. They want you to grow old here. This is a place where you can come and retire as a college football player. And that is a whole lot better than having dudes dip the transfer portal. Or, hey, we were Texas Tech. We had the greatest NFL player of all time, but we went 7-5 perennially. I would rather have
that was a good year for Mahomes. That was a good one.
Rather have Brandon Weeden, who was the greatest quarterback in Oklahoma State history, who led them to 11 regular season wins, but in the end was an NFL bust. However, if you're an Oklahoma State fan, you're not a Browns fan. You're a fan of the Oklahoma State college football team, and that was a great college football player. I think that's what these multiple Big 12 schools are building. Just because Baylor, BYU, and even Houston were left out of the fold doesn't mean that's a bad thing. Coming up, that all aside, a lot of the guys did get signed. A lot of them are now on NFL rosters or will have a chance to compete for that NFL roster that will be cut down at the end of the summer. This is a Locked On Big 12, Locked On Baylor crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's show is brought to you by Game Time. Why is it brought to you by Game Time? Because it's game time. There's nothing like an atmosphere of the NBA playoffs. I went last year, saw Oklahoma City versus the Dallas Mavericks. Luka Doncic, RIP in peace. Unreal, electric in that arena. And with Game Time, you can be a part of it without the stress of last-minute ticket hunting. Tickets usually go down as tip-off gets closer. Last-minute deals can save you up to 60%. Last-minute deals save you 60%. Concerts, comedy, theater, so much more. All-in pricing means no surprise fees at checkout. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. That is code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed. Terms apply. That's Game Time. Cameron Stuart of Locked On Baylor, who had Matt Jones picked up by an NFL team. Tyler Batty, Brennan Presley picked up. Caleb Etienne, the BYU offensive tackle, is a Cincinnati Bengal. Kobe Bryant from Kansas, the cornerback, is off the board. Mello Dotson, who helped make up that defensive backfield for Kansas, and Corey Kiner, the running back from Cincinnati, who was dominant in Big 12 play despite not getting a lot of love. This conference had a spattering of big-time signings post-draft, and I think from BYU to Baylor to Iowa State to Cincinnati to Oklahoma State, there are a lot of NFL teams that will be very lucky to have the guys they brought into their fold, despite not picking them up over the weekend.
Yeah, and you know what that's a big credit to is Brett Yormark and Big 12 Pro Day. That's been it's proven to be a success over the last 2 years. It's not the most, hotly televised event. Neither is anybody's pro day, to be quite fair. And it seems a little cheesy, a little silly, but it's another chance to get in front of pro scouts. And this is how it pays off. Not for the guys who are being taken in the first round, but for the guys who don't have a ton of draft stock, who would normally be going to someone else's pro day because their team doesn't have enough guys to do it. So that has paid off for a lot of these guys. I know you're a big Matt Jones fan, Matt Jones legend. It's going to be good to see him in kind of black and white again. Silver
was
and
in many classes with his now wife, actually. Shout out Kayla.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And she resisted that temptation. Incredible. What a woman. Honestly, the biggest one I thought from Baylor, one of our shared favorites, Monterey Baldwin, Sugar Bowl hero.
Monorail.
It's now signed with the Miami Dolphins.
Yeah.
You think they like that kind of wide receiver? Like 5'9", fastest guy on the planet Earth kind of receiver?
Some Tyreek-esque, huh?
Maybe Tyreek's replacement there. So yeah, it comes up big for the Big 12 Pro Day and shows that we've got pro talent here. You might not hear their name in the first round all the time. You might see their name on the ticker during a Subway commercial,
Sure.
or you might see them signed after the draft. But yeah.
Sorry, not to. I'm going with the Subway during Subway commercial, the ticker thing, because I got to a point on Saturday where a bunch of us we were inside of Clemson Memorial Stadium. They got a massive hospitality room.
What are you doing there?
Some stuff. There was a big screen in the room playing the draft, and we get to the point around round 4 where Reese Davis goes, "We're going to send it to Puerto Rico. There's an orphanage there, and they will be making the pick for the Cincinnati Bengals." And then the guy would say,
"They're just making stuff up along the way."
Yeah,
yeah.
Well, it seemed like some of their camera feeds were. I was like, did they just set this up? Did they just tell them hey, you're going to
StreamYard link?
You've got to make the draft pick for the Bengals in this moment. So they'd go to the orphanage in Puerto Rico, and the guy would say, "Hola, welcome to Puerto Rico or Monterrey, Mexico, or whatever it was." And I thought, wow, Shor Sanders is really going to be he's going to be drafted by some 17-year-old soccer player in Paris, France, who's standing with the Eiffel Tower in the background. And as demoralizing as that scene, I couldn't wait for the viral moment where they pitched it to El Salvador to find out that Shor Sanders is off the board. That would have been just even more delightful. I thought, man, yes, you want to hear your name called. Well, this is probably not how you want to hear your name called. And
would you take that real quick? Would you take that or prank phone call?
Oh, the prank
which is
phone
apparently
call,
the worst thing that's ever happened on the planet.
They want those people arrested. They
want the Falcons to forfeit draft picks. I'm like, this isn't correct. I'm sorry.
Because of the prank call. I don't know if I have an opinion on that exactly yet, but I do have an opinion on Matt Jones or Tyler Batty or guys like that, or Monterey Baldwin getting a much more cool hey, call from the GM. We'd love to pick you up. This is low pressure. We're going to bring you in, and you're going to compete. If you don't make it, we didn't draft you. You weren't a first-round draft pick. You can become a great story. You can kind of build your own story at that point, rather than someone from Ecuador getting to say your name on. And not to say that's a bad thing. It's just a really odd optic. These guys can now kind of build your own adventure book with the Miami Dolphins, with the Las Vegas Raiders, with the Los Angeles Rams, and prove what the Big 12 is kind of made of. The blue-collar overlooked guy who is in Manhattan, Kansas, Lawrence, Kansas, Ames, Iowa, that shows up to any of these NFL programs, and they're a much harder worker than the wide receiver from Coral Gables.
Yeah, and the other thing, too, is not to preview too much of a look into our next segment, but, they don't always get this right, they drafted Rico Gathers when he was a basketball player at Baylor. He was drafted in the NFL, but every year there's a Pro Bowler who wasn't drafted. You know what I mean? And it's not always exact. And to your point up there too of, these guys who stay for a couple of years, you hear it with wide receivers all the time. They don't finish routes. Well, yeah, most good receivers in college football don't finish routes. That's college football. But you got a guy who's played in there for 4 years or 5 years instead of 2 and has taken a lot more snaps, and they're usually more coachable. They're down to technique kind of things rather than habits, how to carry themselves in meetings and things like that. And so in the Big 12, you can kind of sell that of like, hey, you're not going to be 2 and screw and take it in the first round. But if you develop here, as a 3-star, right? That's what a lot of the guys are that Baylor, Iowa State, Kansas are recruiting. You can come here, learn how college football is done, be here for 4 years. You're going to play some high-level football. You're going to play against the Heisman Trophy winner. You got a chance to play in the college football playoff here. And that is going to benefit you down the line, whether you get your name called during the draft or not. Whether your name is called at the Puerto Rican orphanage or you're getting the call from the general manager after the draft is over. Like, you are going to be prepared for this kind of thing. And I think it also is a benefit that, we have some dynamite coaches in this league. Like, Baylor aside, there's not a lot of coaches who are on the hot seat most years in this conference. And that does speak well to guys going to the next level.
May sound odd. And maybe it is odd that we have a historic draft, 31 guys, the first time since 2005. And Tet McMillan being a top 10 draft, a couple of top 10 draft picks, having Travis Hunter come off the board at number 2 as a dynamic player that the Jacksonville GM, the 24-year-old Adderall out Jacksonville GM really is blessed and grateful to have. And their new head coach is not much better. That guy also is. He doesn't blink. He got this real doctor vibe.
I'm waiting for Adam Gase to get a job on that staff.
Yeah,
I'm waiting for somebody like that.
They're really robotic people in Jacksonville in that organization. And despite how big that was, I think the Big 12 signees are also lined up to do really well. And actually, Pete Mundo writes a great article about it at Heartland College Sports that gives you more details as well. Coming up, ESPN was really, really bad with Shor Sanders. They're really, really bad about it. This is Locked On Big 12, part of the Locked On Podcast Network with Locked On Baylor, your team every day. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. Why is it brought to you by FanDuel? Because FanDuel is where I go to win money during the NBA playoffs. They're here. Right now, when you join FanDuel, you place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if that bet wins. I love how FanDuel makes betting so easy, whether it's picking my favorite team or diving into player props on their app. 3-pointers, steals, assists. FanDuel has so many ways to bet your favorite props. Plus, the game already tipped off. You can combine live prop bets into a same-game parlay for a chance to win big. Don't miss out. Go to FanDuel.com. Claim your $250 in bonus bets today. That is at FanDuel. Cameron Stuart, who's entertaining, joins for this one. Shor Sanders. He was at pick 22. I believe they started showcasing him as Mel Kyper's number 1 player left, number 1 player available. Maybe a little
did he wait that long?
Before. It may have been a hair before because Mel had his number 5 prospect overall. And some mock drafts a couple weeks ago had Shor, in their top 10. Mm-hmm. ESPN was egregious with this. From Mel Kyper yelling, and he was disgusted. And yes, this is not a good thing. And I'm also frustrated and mad with the way it was handled by NFL teams. Mel Kyper made it a lot about himself, it seemed. Then Reese Davis yelling across the table at Mel, and then another guy yelling at Mel. Just across the board, they took a lot of attention away from a good athlete and turned it more into a joke, a show, some theater. I think ESPN just really sucked with this entire deal.
Yeah, and it starts at the top of the draft. Like, as someone who has followed the draft kind of coverage the last couple of weeks with a favorite NFL team picking in the top 5, you do that. It became apparent a week or two ago that Shor was not going to be in that top 4. And that if he wasn't, that he was going to slip. And yet, when I turn on the draft, the Titans are on the clock for 1-1, pick number 1 in the draft, and all I'm seeing is Shor Sanders highlights. And I'm like, this is odd, right? I get it, right? He's got the last name, he's got the dad, he's got the prolific college career. I get it, but like, I'm seeing nothing on Cam Ward, who's going to be the number 1 pick in the draft. And at the end, Mel Kiper's like, yeah, my pick's Shor. I'm like, is this guy serious? And it obviously snowballs from there until what was that, day 3, when there's just a complete crash out, complete meltdown, where Mel Kyper is saying that the NFL does not know how to evaluate quarterbacks. They haven't known that for 50 years. Of course, Mel has. He had Johnny Manziel as the number 1 pick. He had Blaine Gabbert being better than Cam Newton. He had Jimmy Clausen as the best quarterback in the draft class, or else he would retire. Mel just seems like a guy who who reads the comments. Let's say that. And this was a blow up at the end of that kind of process. But you're right. It's like at the end of the day, it's just not taking Shedeur for the player that he is. And that is a very good college player who has some promise to be a pro, right? Like, I don't think anyone's sitting here being like, yeah, he's going to be an all-pro NFL quarterback. Not anymore, anyway. Not in the weeks leading up to the draft. But he could be a starting quarterback in this league. And instead, it's Mel Kyper for 5 rounds saying he's the best available player. And then that becomes this whole, like, why is nobody taking him? There must be something way wrong here. Like, there's like the NFL is so off base to the point where we're thinking that the NFL owners are actually, blackballing the kid out of the league. It's like, no, it's Mel Kyper just really missed on this one and then really didn't handle it well. Like, was about to take his ball and go home when it comes to NFL draft coverage.
I think the consideration should have been where I sat with this. Let's get in the mind of an NFL GM of why past round 2, where you know he's the best player on the board. Everyone does. Why at this point strategically are you not taking him? Do you fear that Deion will become the head coach? You'll get fired in 2 years. Do you fear that the distraction will become too much for your locker room? Do you fear? But that was never the point here. It was never a point of, hey, he didn't get taken in the 3rd round, and it kind of makes sense. People want to see how far he'll drop. They're playing chicken with each other. There wasn't an analysis of it. It was just guys yelling across a desk at each other about how stupid this was, or in the case of Mel Kyper, Reese Davis yelling at Mel Kyper about how stupid he was.
And Reese Davis having to talk him down to reason here.
Yeah,
Mel, before you get into why the NFL has screwed this up for 50 years, let's take a second to think about this.
Right. Maybe the crown jewel of all of this to me was the idea in my brain that if I'm Mel Kyper, if I am an astrophysicist, and I say, hey, I discovered a new planet. I'm confident on my own. I discovered a new planet, and I tell the world how cool this new planet is. And then someone on a committee of astrology says, it doesn't exist. And my job is to tell you, so my job is to predict something, to see something, to this is what I get paid millions of dollars to do. And I was so unbelievably wrong. Maybe I too would cause a scene. That's what it felt like. Like his job hindered on him being as wrong as he's been in his entire career on where a player would be drafted, and really hawked Shedeur until the draft began, and then the guy fell till round 5. It's his job to be the expert on this, and he pointed at a planet in the sky and said, "You guys see that?" And there was nothing there.
Hey, Mel, I get it. I had Baylor basketball winning the Big 12 this year. Okay, I get it. It sucks, and I think too, obviously he does his own scouting, he does his own film work and everything, but he's also got a lot of contacts within the league. And I'm sure he's got a lot of contacts in and around Deion or college coaches.
Couldn't he have used those, please, on the air to give us any context?
Yeah, but probably. And I'm just sure he's hearing from people in the college game and people around Deion and stuff like that. No, this kid's got the makeup, or this kid has got, here's my comp to him as someone who used to coach in the NFL. And meanwhile, the executives and the assistant coaches in the NFL are also coming out with different reports in the media that are like, this was a bad interview. We really don't know what's coming with this kid character-wise. It's not like he's, gotten in trouble with the law or anything. But I think there are some maturity issues, and it's almost tough to even blame him for that. And Mel just ran with the people that were saying this guy is going to be special. Deion's not blowing smoke. This guy's going to be really special. And the NFL GMs and scouts and assistant coaches did not agree. No. And he got taken by the same team that took another Big 12 legend, Dillon Gabriel.
Yes.
I was stunned at that, by the way. Literally, they showed coming back to break, Dillon Gabriel in Hawaii, I think is where he's from, with his family. And I'm like, why is he having a party tonight? This was the 2nd and 3rd round. I was like, he's not getting drafted tonight. The next pick, Drake. Next pick. Dillon Gabriel, quarterback.
The same team as Shor Sanders, who's now in a locker room with Joe Flacco. And notable good guy, Deshaun Watson.
Joe Flacco's the best quarterback in there, most stable quarterback in that.
He might be, and he's still hanging around. I think his goal is to play with Joe Flacco Jr. He's got a real Frank Gore thing going on, real LeBron
thing,
Gore thing happening right now.
I've always said about Joe Flacco, he's got a LeBron complex.
Yep,
he's got the most LeBron complex of anyone in that quarterback room.
Have likened the two to one another. He won a ring, didn't want to hang it up. He's not here for the rings. He's here for the people.
Here for the legacy, man.
I just don't understand. To me, it got to the point, and no one really brought it up.
What was the point, by the way? What was the point where you were like, how is Shedeur not gone by now?
Definitely end of the first round. And then it became a mayonnaise guy, Will Levis.
Will Levis, yeah.
You're like, okay, first 3 or 4 picks. Kevin Borba said it, which I thought was really funny. He told his girlfriend, he's like, hey, we'll go to dinner. We'll go on a date tonight. He's going to go in the first 4 or 5 picks in the second round. We're good to go. And he was there till the 5th round. I definitely...
You're still waiting for dinner, man.
It became a weird deal when we got to the second round. After the second round, it became, turn the TV on. Somebody turn the TV on. And pick by pick, it was, okay, the Cardinals, could they use a quarterback? Okay, maybe.
Because at that point, you're like, teams are looking at depth quarterbacks. Like, you're not talking about a starter at that point. Almost anybody can take a quarterback at that point.
Tyler Shuck comes off the board. And
that was weird.
What was that?
There was some momentum towards that, so I wasn't too stunned. But
also
as a football fan, you're like, really? And Dylan Gabriel, I just couldn't. I was like, wow, that's bizarre.
So I definitely believe the third round is where I was, okay, something's gone bad wrong. And I'm watching it with a bunch of people, and we're all pick by pick going, okay, Seattle, this is it. This is the one. Pick 76. This is the one. And then it never was. And then I told the story on the show yesterday, but we're at Clemson getting ready for the banana ball game, ESPN2, like a lot of pomp and circumstance here. We're overlooking at 3 p.m., 20,000 people in the parking lot waiting to get in. Like this just chaotic thing as they're about to take in this banana ball game. And the vice president of the company looks over at me and goes, crazy, isn't it? I was like, yeah, man, built a lot here.
We've come.
This is wild. And he goes, I mean, the 5th round. It had superseded everything in front of us. We just couldn't. It was hard to fathom what was occurring. Oh, there's the kitchen noise. Hard to fathom what was occurring over the course of the weekend with Shor Sanders. ESPN handled it terribly. That's Cameron Stuart of Locked On Baylor. You can follow him at Real Cam Stuart. He had to mute his microphone because his girlfriend's cooking stuff in the kitchen, making a whole lot of noise, and has no regard for when he's trying to do his job with Locked On. This has been and always will be Locked On. Thanks for making it your first listen every single day. A crossover with Baylor and Dose Grande.